This is Hannibal back here from thehannibaltv.com, and this is probably the quickest follow-up interview we had in history with Mario Mancini, WWE performer that most of you remember from the 80s and 90s, from the Superstars and the Challenge tapings, had the first match of many superstars, and now he has a professional wrestling training school. And before we get into your career, Mario Mancini, who are some of your top students that you've trained over the years? That you have that school with Paul Roma, by the way.
I do. Our biggest star that came out of there is Richard Holiday, who is signed with MLW right now. Who is going at it constantly with Hammerstone. So I'm thinking that Holiday eventually. He loves MLW, but I'm hoping that he's AEW bound or WWE bound. We do have one student that he's gifted with the goods, and his name is Greg Baylor, and he just recently turned 18, and I think he was training since he was 16, so he's already got the gift of gab with the microphone, and he's a tremendous athlete, and we're looking for big things with him. But mostly all the guys that come out of there, they're excellent workers. We have the premier tag team in the House of Pain. As I say, they are tag team wrestling yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
We've used the House of Pain up here in Great North Wrestling in the past. Actually, they're two big boys that are agile for their size.
Right, and that's the catch. So that's the catch to them. When I first met them, I was astonished. So because I saw them and I went, oh boy, here comes 3 miles an hour. And then all of a sudden I saw them work and I went, oh my God, these guys can move. They can really move. So they are really good. On top of that, they're two really, really nice guys. I bump heads with Nick Payne every now and then, but it's all in good fun. Those guys are a couple of our most senior people in PAPW, along with Matthias and Holiday. They are the origins of PAPW. So of course we have a lot other talent there, as like the Guardian of Chaos, Big Daddy, who worked the entire country as a wrestling manager from the mid 80s until the 2000s. So he worked with everybody practically I worked with. He worked with Bundy and Terry Funk and the Samoans and a host of all other people. He worked with Bruno Sammartino. He worked with a lot of people. He really was a talent. He does the color commentary now for PAPW. We have a 20-year veteran there, Bull Dread, who really started out in hardcore wrestling. So we're pretty diversified there. We have a pretty good crew there.
Now, I've heard those MLW and Impact contracts, and I'm not hating on MLW, but I'm going to ask you a question about your contract. That sometimes they don't use the wrestlers that often, but they have to sign contracts where they're only paid if they wrestle, but they can't wrestle anywhere else. Was your WWE contract that you mentioned in the first interview that you had to sign before your first match against Greg Valentine, was that an exclusive contract where you could only wrestle for them?
Hannibal, as you know by watching my other podcast, that I hold nothing back and I don't lie. Recently on a podcast, I recalled the story. I was in the dressing room when I watched the monitor, and a fan came on and said, no, Mario, I was in the crowd. That's not how it went. And I'm like, I was there. So anyway, I digress. I tell the truth no matter what. So my contract stated that they own my name, although, as Tony Altomar said to me in 1983, late 83, early 84, he went, no ring announcer is ever going to be able to pronounce your name. And he was right, because my name is Leonard Inzitari, Inzitari. And unless I pronounce it and spell it, when you look at it, you can't pronounce it. So my trainer went to grammar school with my mother and father in Stamford, Connecticut. So he said, I know your mother's maiden name is Mancini. I said, yeah, it is. And he went Guido, Gino, Anthony, all the Italian names you can go, first names you could go through. And Mario came out of his mouth. And he went, Mario Mancini. That's your name. I mean, my mother was so, when I went home and told her, she was like, oh my God, I wish my father was alive. Come to find out, I'm glad my grandfather wasn't, because if he came to see me live, he would go into the ring and try to beat the guys up that were beating me. but anyway, my contract said he owned that name, Mario Mancini, and all the rights to it, and I would never get paid any. I would never get paid any less than $50 for a wrestling match. And the contract was quite extensive, but there was a promoter in Avon, Connecticut named Rocco LaPenta, and he ran a lot of shows. And Tony Altomar was his agent. And I would call Terry Garvin and say, is it okay if I work these shows? And he's like, yeah. And then guys like Killer Kowalski would call the office and lease guys out from the office. And they would say, listen, you guys, me and SD Jones would go and work for Killer Kowalski up in Massachusetts. So, that was kind of my contract. But it was for a period of time. I'm sorry, Holiday. Hannibal asked me the question. I went over Holiday's contract before he signed it. He had guaranteed dates. He had guaranteed, not specific dates. He had guaranteed appearances, and a number of them guaranteed appearances. And I think it was a 3-year contract. And the pay was progressive each year of the contract. So it wasn't a bad contract that MLW gave him. It was pretty good. So of course he was concerned about the exposure. That's everything, because they do pay-per-views and everything. So at the same time, he's getting exposure, and Court's a pretty good guy to work for. Of course, he would come in and check in with myself and Roma about how he's doing in the dressing room, the communication he was having, and how everything was, and making sure everything's straight and everything. And MLW is a good, solid company. Yeah.
Fan has a question here that says he listens to Bruce Pritchard's podcast and he doesn't seem to like Paul Roma. Do you think jealousy played into that? Not liking guys like Terry Taylor and Paul. I've heard a lot that don't like Terry Taylor. Paul, I haven't heard much, other than, of course, the people that are mad about the Four Horsemen.
Okay. Adjust your back pillow. Hit your recliner. Here we go. Number one, I like Terry Taylor. I think Terry Taylor was an excellent worker. And I have to be honest, I wish I knew why they made him the Red Rooster. Obviously, somebody was hot at him. He had heat with somebody. But I thought he was a lot better than that gimmick, and he was a really good wrestler. The only thing I know about Bruce Pritchard is, he was Brother Love, and he came out with Taker when I worked with him the very first time. I know he was in the back. I didn't have a relationship with Bruce. However, I do have a 38-year relationship with Paul Roma. We went to the same wrestling school. No one liked Paul Roma. Very few. He had the best body in wrestling, bar none. Nobody can touch him. He is the greatest athlete I've ever seen in my life. It took me 10 months to get through wrestling school. It took Paul Roma 6 weeks. 6 weeks, and he was on TV. Paul Roma would be in the gym in the wrestling school, and there would be a front desk that was about 4.5 foot high, and he would stand in front of it, leap, and stand on it. Well, you know what? I wish you had a name to your handle, because I really, you know what I mean? I just read your comment. Let me reverse that for you. All right. Let me reverse that. Paul Roma thought he was a bigger star than he was. That's Bruce's comment, because Paul Roma should have been a bigger star than he was, because he had the tools to become a bigger star than he was. And he had the ability, and he had everything. He had all the tools to be a superstar. You guys have to remember something. Kurt Hennig got his gimmick of Mr. Perfect. He came into the dressing room and walked up to Paul Roma and said, "This is you, not me. You're the one that should have this gimmick, not me." He said it to Roma's face. Paul Roma had such control of his body. He knew what to put in his body to make himself vascular. He pull over to the side of the road and open up a can of tuna and pour some applesauce in it and eat it. This guy sacrificed everything to look the way he did, and the dirty looks that he would get. You know what I mean? I met Roma, I was 18 and he was 26. And he tried to help me. He still tries to help me. He tried to help me all he could. You know what I mean? And I finally got so frustrated, and I said, "Roma, sorry I didn't start lifting weights when I was 11. I'm 18 years old. I'm sorry I look like the Michelin Man." You know, he'd go, "Jesus, Mancini, the least you can do is get a tan." You know, the comments on YouTube is, who could forget Mario Mancini with that 80s porn stash and that pasty white skin? He goes, "At least you can do is get a tan." You know, he would try to help me all he could. You know what I mean?
Tanning is not that easy, though. I could confirm that if you don't have the skin for it.
Yeah, I mean, he sacrificed so much, and he worked hard in the gym. And listen, I love Jake. Jake and I get along really well. I love Jake. But when Roma first walked into the dressing room, Jake was giving him a look. He goes, "Why is that guy looking at me?" I go, "Because he doesn't look like you. You're going to get a lot of heat in here because you're built like a brick shit house." I go, "Okay, there's Paul Orndorff. All right, there's Paul Orndorff, and you know, eventually the Warrior came in. You know, there's the Warlord. There was Hercules Hernandez, but Roma was symmetrical." You know what I mean? Roma was like, you know, he left bodybuilding to come into professional. He wanted to be a professional bodybuilder. You know what I mean? And I'm going to tell everybody something that you definitely don't know. You don't know this. And it's a tremendous story. Paul got out of bodybuilding. He wanted to be a professional athlete. And he wanted to set example for kids. And he wanted to help kids. And he wanted kids to look up to him. because he donated so much of his time and efforts to St. Jude's, and he and Ray Hercules would go to hospitals and see kids, and Roma was really into like trying to help kids. So he gets out of bodybuilding because he didn't like the politics of it. So he goes and listen. Let me tell you guys a secret about power and glory. Power to Ray, glory to Roma. Power to Ray, the strong man, and glory to the cocky narcissist Roma. No. Roma made up that tag team. And Ray said, why? And he said, power and glory to God. Nobody knows that's why they were called Power and Glory, because that was their tribute to the Lord, to his power and glory. Nobody knows that, right? Okay, now you do.
Interesting.
Okay, so Roma goes and tries out for the New York Jets. Does really well, and they're really interested in him. And a couple things come out of Gastineau's mouth that Roma didn't like, and Roma want to have for Gastineau. So the New York Jets didn't work out for him. He went after Gastineau.
What happened with him and Coco Beware anyways? Wasn't that the reason why Roma had to go to WCW, but he ended up having a better push in WCW anyways?
No, and if I get a crack from Roma for this, I hope you guys don't. I hope it was worth it for you guys, because I don't know how much he wants you guys to know. So you got to let me finish this one, though. So Gino Carabello and I are in Trouble, Connecticut for a show, and this little boxing promoter comes in, little old guy, tiny guy. And all of a sudden we see this guy with bowling balls for shoulders walk behind him. And I go, Gino, look at that guy. He goes, who the hell is that? I said, I have no idea. That guy's huge. So he introduces him to Tony Altomare. That following Saturday, Roma comes in. Hey, Paul Roma, how you doing? Paul, he didn't come up with his name yet. Paul, how you doing? Good. Yeah, I don't know anything about wrestling. I said, what do you mean? Because I don't know anything about wrestling. This guy said I'd make a good pro wrestler. I go, you ever watch wrestling? He goes, no. I go, you've never watched wrestling your whole life? He went, no. I said, all right, get in the ring. I'll show you to take a bump. So he got in a ring and everything. So the 6 weeks goes by. I said, you're not going to believe this, but I'm going to take you to Poughkeepsie. You're ready to go to Poughkeepsie? He's like, okay. And no problem, Sheldon. So we walk into Poughkeepsie, and Chief looks at me and goes, Mr. Mancini. I go, yeah, Chief. He goes, who's the Greek god over there? I said, that's Paul Roma. Could he work? I go, yeah. Did you help train him? I went, yeah. He goes, okay, I'll put him on the board. Okay. So I go sit next to Roma. He's sitting there. I go, you're working tonight. Oh, okay. So, like I said, Jake's giving him a look. He goes, who's that? I go, it's Jake the Snake Roberts. He goes, why is he looking at me like that? I go, because he doesn't look like you. He doesn't, Jake's standing there smoking a cigarette, looking at Roma. So everybody's looking at Roma. All of a sudden, Hogan this is a true story. Hogan walks by us to go to the men's room. And he goes, who's that? I said, it's Hulk Hogan. He's the heavyweight champion. You guys got to remember, this is December of 84. So this is before WrestleMania 1. I go, he's the heavyweight champion. And he looks at him and he goes, he's fat. And I went, oh, Jesus. I got off my chair and I squatted in front of him. I said, Roma, you shh. I go, you're going to get blackballed before you even start. You can't say that. Can't say that. And he looks over at him and he goes, well, look at him. He's a big water bag. Look at all the water he's holding. I'm like, holy Jesus God. So now he goes out there and he does a job. And he comes back and he sits in his chair and he's going in the chair. I go, what's the matter? He goes, he can't beat me. I'm gonna beat his ass in the parking lot. He can't beat me on his best day. Roma, it's what it is, man. It's a work. I go, no, it's not. You're thinking about it the wrong way. I can't lose like that. I can't lose like that. I go, listen to me. They can't deny you. It's only a matter of time before you're over. They cannot deny you. Look at your body. They cannot deny you. And then they put him with SD. And then they put him with Jimmy Powers. And then they put him with Ray. Now, the reason why he left the WWF is because for some reason, which he never found out why, with his run with Ray, they split him up. Roma was going over in singles and house matches. Ray was doing jobs. So Roma went to the office to meet with Vince to ask him why. They didn't agree, and he quit. And he went to the WCW. So the Coco thing, that was a misunderstanding. But again, Coco walked up to Roma. Roma was sitting down. And, Roma is like the Terminator. So Coco's like, hey, I heard you said some stuff about me, Roma. And he's like, Coco, I didn't say anything about you. No, that's not what I heard. He goes, Coco, listen. He goes, well, I want to do something about him, man. He's like, Coco, I don't want to fight you. Don't want to fight you because at the time he was over, and Roma wasn't. He was over. So you get in a fight with a guy that's over and you hurt him, you're gone. So Roma's like, I don't want to fight you. And Coco whacked him while he was sitting down. Boom. So Roma goes, boom. Coco, I said, I don't want to fight you. Boom. I don't want to fight. It was like a feather hit him. So Coco went to hit him again, and Roman said, oh, no. And he just took him to the ground and held him there. And, so he went to the next town, and Pap's like, hey, what about a fight? Well, I heard something about a fight. Roman goes, what fight? There's no fight. He goes, you and Coco. He goes, there's no fight between Coco and I. He goes, what are you talking about? There was a fight between you and Coco. Yes, there was. And he said, no, there's no fight. He goes, how can you, everybody told me there was a fight. How could you tell me there was no fight? He goes, a fight is when two people are engaging in fisticuffs. I was just getting hit. That's not a fight. And I grabbed them so I wouldn't get hit again. That's not a fight. And Pat just walked away. And then he went up to an agent, and the agent said Coco was in a dressing room by himself because he had the bird. So the agent said to him, if I were you, I would have kicked the shit out of him. He goes, you back me up at that? He goes, yeah. He goes, no. You'll back me up at the office? And he went, yeah, Roma, I will. He went running. Open the door, Coco. Coco's going, get away from me, Roma. Open the door, you motherfucker. Open the door, Coco. Get away, Roma. Go away. He never opened the door. But they're cool today. Obviously, they see each other at conventions, and there's no hard feelings and anything like that. So there's your why Roma left the WWF and the Coco story. There you have it.
Yeah, I had asked Coco about that, but he said he didn't want to talk about it. So maybe that was why. But the other thing maybe Roma shared with you, there was always rumors that Jim Powers, his old partner, and Pat Patterson, there was always Patterson and Lombardi and Powers. You always heard those names thrown around. Did he ever share anything about that?
No, Roma used to give him a hard time about taking one for the team with Patterson. But Jimmy never would. He wasn't like that. But Pat was heavy on him. He was hard on him. He was going after him hard, but Jimmy didn't buckle. Listen, there's nothing wrong with that if that's your preference. But when it's not your preference, you know what I mean? That's why the people that really knew the business, you know what I mean? And they go, oh, Mancini, just keep doing job after job after job. And I go, yeah. And I get to sleep at night too.
There's a guy on here that keeps asking this question, so we'll give it to him so he stops. What WWE encyclopedia do you hate the most? Because I've heard you say in other interviews,
all of them
brings this to
all of them. I called the office and I screamed at Vince's secretary because I wanted Vince on the phone myself. Now, the last time I did this podcast, Hannibal, you had mentioned, a match I had with Taker. And of course, if you look at the match I had with Playboy Buddy Rhodes at 317 pounds, I slammed him. I was jacked. I you know what I mean? I was jacked on, testosterone and Anavar and Deca, and I was steroids because I was getting frustrated that I wanted to push, and you kind of get caught up in that, you know what I mean? So, there was a time Chief would joke around me in the dressing room. He go, "Oh, Mr. Roma, can I see you for a minute?" I go, "Not quite, Chief." He goes, "You do look good though, Mancini." I go, "Yeah, but not quite, not Roma, not quite." So, when that encyclopedia came out, number one, I didn't know I was in it. Joe Barone at the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame told me that I was in the WWE encyclopedia like a mark. I ran to Barnes & Noble and I bought one. And I just kind of was thumbing through it and looking at all my friends. And I'm like, oh, that's good. Wow, that's really nice, man, what they said about them. No, that's really good. That's really nice. And then I got to the M's, and the first edition I'm in doesn't have a picture. It just has my name, and I'm next to Mark Henry, and I read it, and it goes, in order to become a professional wrestler, one needs to possess a good body and charisma. Mancini had neither. I'm like, this guy said something nice about every single person in that encyclopedia except me. Now, after that, he did say, possibly the most resilient wrestler in pro wrestling history, right? Okay, I like that, But I called the office. I said, I want to talk to Vince. I knew I was going to get him, so I got his secretary, and I said, listen to me. If they're not going to say anything nice about me, I don't want to be in the damn thing. Take me out of it. I don't even want to be in it. I go, if you're not going to say anything nice, I go, what the hell did I take all those bumps for? And I hung up the phone. Because what a shit write-up they have on there in me. It's terrible. It's just terrible. So, yeah, I don't like any of the editions of the encyclopedia. How's that? They all bring them to me at the conventions. Sign my encyclopedia, sure. I sign right over the words.
People that aren't wrestlers might not know this, but there's actually an art to making people look good and making even the bad wrestlers look believable. You said that you were convinced that the Lanny Poffo thing with me backstage was a shoot, and for people
you had me right here.
He sold. It's because he sold. So, like, that's a talent.
Yeah, you had me right in the palm of your hand, man. I went, oh my God. I go, this is a calm dude. I mean, he must have lost it in his old age or something, because you had me, Hannibal. You got me, and if I didn't see your interview after that, an interview with you in it, saying that it was a work, I went, wow, that thing was a work. I sent it to Roma, and I said, was this a shoe? I go, do you think it looks like a shoe? He goes, I don't know, I can't tell. He goes, I don't know, it could be. He goes, because it it has to do with my frustration. You know what I mean? Where um you know between the gap between generations. I got an example for you. So match started out the other night. We had a show the other Saturday night for juvenile diabetes, charity show, PAPW. Shake the hand. No, no, don't shake his hand. Don't shake his hand. No, 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 no. So they shake hands. Go to lock up. The heel goes to boot the baby face right after they shook hands. So the baby face has his foot going. I believed you with the handshake. I believed you. You got the foot here, and he dropped. I'm sitting next to Roma. He dropped the foot and snatches the guy in a headlock. I look over at Roma and I go, that's a bump. Either you spin the guy around, give him an atomic ass drop, clothesline the guy, at the very least sweep the other leg from underneath him and let him take a bump. That's something a bump is taken from. Snatch a headlock from. So you get kind of frustrated between the way they work now and the way our psychology was back then. And you don't know if guys are working stiffer these days or whatever. And from what I understand in the WWE, you'll get fined if you shake hands the way we shook hands. They shake hands stiff now, like men. No, you didn't do that back then. You shook somebody's hand stiff, then they didn't want to work with you. That was a sign that you were loose and you're a good worker, you're a veteran, you're whatever. So, the gap between generations and you working with Lanny, I thought maybe there was a huge disparity there, and you were stiffer than he's used to or something. But the bottom line is, you got me. You got me.
Yeah, but my point was, like, for people that said he shouldn't have been in WWE as long, he was only in because Macho was his brother. That just shows you he was able to sell that to convince people that he was actually injured when he really wasn't. We had planned that all along. So you had that same ability. That's why you were brought back all the time, because you could sell these guys. So it is a talent, because I've been in the ring with people that don't sell.
Yeah. Well, of course, we teach in the school that if you're with somebody who doesn't sell, you make them sell. But I think the most fun I ever had, being with the people that knew me, growing up, obviously, my own family, my own brothers and sisters and mother and father, God forbid they opened up a door behind me and my fist would hit the door, and then, oh, Jesus, that was fast. I was behind you. They're like, oh my God, are you okay? I'm like, oh my God. And I go, you forget what I do for a living? And they go, oh, you son of a bitch. I thought I really hit you now. So if you could still convince your family that you're living with under the same roof, you got to be doing something right,
Oh, for sure. And for the people that said you didn't have a great body, I mean, you're more jacked there than the majority of the people in AEW against Honky Tonk Man. You may not have had all the hype, but you looked like you could probably bench press at least 300 pounds in this one.
Well, listen, I love working with Wayne. He's such a good friend of mine. When I was against Playboy Buddy Rhodes and Taker, I was competing in the 242-pound class up in New Hampshire, Scott Taylor's American Powerlifting Association there. I was in the 242-pound weight class, and I was deadlifting 500. 550, I was squatting 500, and I had gotten cortisone in my elbows for tendonitis, so I could only get up 405. But that's what I was doing then, and I barely got up. I can do 385 really well, but it was a lot. I mean, I had to be, I had the power suit on, and it wrapped and the whole 9 yards, to get that 405 up. I had the 385 was a good weight for me to bench. And of course, there were powerlifting contests that I went to up there, and guys were opening what I was finishing with, and I wouldn't even get dressed. You know what I mean? But I was powerlifting then. And yeah, I mean, I was insulted that they put that in there. You want to look at me against Bundy in March of '85, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. That's 8 months after I graduated, 9 months after I graduated high school. It was 3 months before my 19th birthday. You know what I mean? And listen, I have no body. I'm 18 years old, but as time progressed, I started taking it seriously in '88. And Roma was on me the whole time, and I wasn't listening. And I finally really buckled down in '88, and I started powerlifting. So, yeah, but I had a little help with the vitamins. So,
yeah, I did particularly notice some of your matches. You looked a lot more full than others, but again, there's also the time periods.
Well, Hannibal, you got to remember something. I had, I did a podcast yesterday with Randy Hogan. I love Randy Hogan, and he said, Mario, I had one pair of trunks my whole career. And I started busting. I go, how can you have one? For me, I had my in-shape trunks and I had my fat trunks. So my in-shape trunks were the ones that just cut off at the waist, and I had a singlet for when I was fat. And I think the heaviest I had separated my shoulder. I couldn't lift, but I wouldn't stop eating. I think the heaviest I was at is that match with DiBiase where I was wearing the singlet. I was just fat. Just fat. So, yeah.
Now, here's a question that you might not know the answer to from someone who I won't try to pronounce their name, but why did Hogan's music come on when you wrestled Paul Orndorff? Was that a mistake?
I never noticed that. I never noticed it. Obviously it was. That's first I heard of it. I didn't pay attention. If it's on YouTube, I'll watch it again. But there's another guy that was underused. You might say, what are you talking about? WrestleMania and everything, but Orndorff could have been the heavyweight champion and carried it easily. Paul Orndorff was great. I did a stretcher match for him. I was happy to do it. Pile driver on the concrete floor. He was a class guy, just a great guy.
Did you ever witness his temper? Because even his son has told me that he had like a crazy temper, and obviously he's got a bit of a list of backstage skirmishes here and there.
Well, yeah, I mean, he had a hot. I've seen him yell a few times. Yeah, I mean, he got a little irritated with me. We were backstage at a show. We weren't wrestling. It was a show called a Pretty Wonderful Reunion. And Roman said, "Why don't you come down and be one of the guys there too?" And I'm like, okay. So they were introducing myself, Orndorff from Roma. So Paul and I were sitting alone back there, and I go, "Do you miss it?" He goes, "No, man, I miss the NFL is what I miss. I don't miss wrestling." and he started getting into it, how he wasn't used right. And I go, "You were in WrestleMania." He's like, "Oh man," and he had a chip on his shoulder, and where he felt he could have been pushed more and used in a better way. I'm glad I got my second father behind me there in this podcast. That makes me happy. Chief Jay Strong. I got him up on my wall here in my office. So yeah, Paul was a great guy, great worker. Never, he never hurt anybody.
Yeah, you never heard that at all.
No.
Other than biting Tony Atlas's ear, but that was outside the ring.
Yeah.
How did you find Tony Atlas? Because he is a nice guy overall, but we've used him a few times, and I could see how he does have his temper here and there.
Tony Atlas is one of my closest brothers in this business. I mean, Roma, Big Steve, Paul Perez, Big Daddy. Those guys are, but Atlas is very close to me. I have a soft spot for Atlas because, number one, I worked with him in Madison Square Garden. Number two, when I got into the business, they were talking in front of me and I didn't know what they were saying. They were talking Pig Latin. I didn't know what it was. And I was green. Oh, man. Len, which happens to be my real name, Len. So let me tell you something. I had to do everything I could because I was always overweight, but they'd bring a case of those, a big box of those into the dressing room. And I would go and get one. And I would sit there and go, I just want to eat two more. I mean, those things were so good. I don't know why they were so good. Maybe we were hungry in the dressing room. But those WWF ice cream bars, oh my God, were they so good. Anyway, I didn't know what they were saying. And they were calling me green and a mark and all this stuff. And SD Jones had told me, he goes, look, are you going to Pennsylvania? I go, yeah. He goes, why don't you park your car, meet me off of Bartow Avenue in the Bronx, and park your car at my house, and we'll do the New York tour together. You drive with me, room with me. And I said, all right. And he smartened me up to the business. Everything. I drove him crazy. When he taught me Pig Latin, I couldn't stop talking in the car. He's like, all right. You got it. All right. And I would stick to SD, just stick to him like Velcro. And Tony Atlas saw that. And Tony was very close to SD. So Tony saw SD was being really close with me. So Tony accepted me. And those were the first two guys that really took me in. So, Tony Atlas could always do no wrong in my eyes. You know what I mean? I'll throw as many pair of loafers at him as I could. You know what I mean? So people could walk on him.
He has good advice too. He's called me and gone on for an hour about promoting tips, and like there is good advice in there. He's smarter than he comes across as if people would take him more seriously sometimes.
Yeah, I mean he's like I said, we're close, and I like seeing him, sitting there and talking with him, and anytime Joe Bruin does the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, when he does the Fan Fest every year, Atlas's table is butted right next to mine. He knows Atlas has to be next to me. So yeah, Tony's very special to me.
There was a fan on here asking if you have any stories about Haku, who I just recently found a picture of him where he actually looks like he may have been a little bit bigger than normal in this one. I wouldn't have messed with him in this day.
Haku, listen, always had a smile on his face. Very soft-spoken. laugh, joke, laugh. That's all he did. Nicest guy in the world. Just couldn't piss him off. I got a phone call from Terry Garvin. Mario. I said, yeah, Terry. We need you in Johnstown. It was noon, Hannibal. It was noon. Now, you guys got to remember something. There's no GPS. There's nothing. There's no cell phones. There's nothing. There's a Rand McNally map in your glove compartment and payphones. We need you in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I go, okay, where's that? He goes, 40 miles east of Philadelphia. I go, okay. He goes, but you better leave in the next half an hour. I go, geez, it should only take me about 3.5 to get there. But okay. Because I've been to the Spectrum. It was 40 miles east of Pittsburgh. It's 418 miles one way. So I get there at 8 o'clock. Gorilla Monsoon looks at his watch and he goes, I go, Garvin called me at noon and told me this was 40 miles east of Philadelphia. He goes, I said, yeah, real funny, Gino. I go, I'm exhausted. He goes, get dressed. He goes, you're out number 3. I go, who am I working with? He goes, Haku. I said, okay. So I go over to Haku, give him a hug. Hey, brother, how you doing? Unlike today's wrestling, I go, what's the finish? He tells me to finish. That's it. That's all you get. Just to finish. Do everything out there, right? I must have locked up with him like a wet noodle because we locked up and he pushed me against the ropes and I went like this to break and he took his hand and he buried it into my stomach and I went, oh, he took me in a headlock and took me down. He goes, are you awake now? I went, uh-huh. And we had a good match. We had a good match. So now we're going back to the dressing room. And he takes my hand and he hugs me. And I said, hey, man, I owe you one. He goes, what? I said, no. I owe you a better match next time we work together. I was just a little tired tonight. I go, no. I owe you a better match. Not a receipt. I said, not a better match, Haku. He goes, oh, okay, brother. Okay. I'm like, oh, shit. I said, oh, my God, man. I almost lost my life. I owe you one. I'm like, what? So, yeah, that's my Haku story.
Yeah, I've heard some people, and I don't think these are people that have actually wrestled him, say that he was light as a feather, because I've wrestled him twice, and maybe he changed at his older age, but he has some of the hardest, possibly the hardest chop I ever felt.
Yeah, no, he was really light when I worked with him, except that when he woke me up, you know what I mean?
Maybe he just wanted to go at it with me, but yeah, his hands are like thicker than a regular person's.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we lose our skills as we get older. I don't know. Maybe he came down a little harder, Hannibal. I don't know.
Or maybe I made the mistake of saying "hit me as hard as you want," as I do.
Oh yeah, that's a problem.
But the Barbarian was lighter than him, just for the record.
Okay.
Somebody brings up a kind of a follow-up question. You said they only told you guys to finish. Did you have any idea how long it would be, or would you just kind of?
Oh yeah. Oh no, you got to time all the time. You know house shows you went any. You can go 12, 14, 16, 17, 18 minutes. Yeah. Oh, you got to time all the time. There was a guy, the way it worked was, the referee got the time and he told the timekeeper and, this was 5 minutes. So the referee would look out at the timekeeper and the timekeeper would go, and he would come in while we're working and go, okay, guys, 7 minutes gone. And then he'd look out and he'd go, all right, guys, 12 minutes gone. Then a minute before the match was over, he'd look out the timekeeper, and the timekeeper would go, a referee would see that, and he'd go, take it home. And then you end the match. In TV, you had Monsoon. Give it to him! Out screaming. Always screaming. Give it to him! So when the timekeeper would hear that on TV with Monsoon, I remember I was working with Bundy on TV, and the bell rang. We locked up. Ref goes, take it home. Chris went, what? We're in a lockup. He goes, take it home. Chris goes, what? So that was I think that was before WrestleMania 3. That's on YouTube. I think he just gave me a forearm, threw me in the corner, gave me a couple avalanches and a splash. That was a stretcher match. But I'll never forget that, man. The bell rings, we lock up, ref goes, take it home. Chris goes, what?
That's my kind of match. That's it.
You would have been good on TV then.
Ryan, you probably don't remember this either because it was so long ago, but you had Demolition's first match.
Twice.
That we brought up last podcast.
Twice.
Oh, both incarnations of Demolition?
I was their debut match twice. I was their debut with Randy Colley, and then I was their debut with Barry Darsow twice. Yeah.
Okay, well, this is kind of a question that I doubt you remember, but he says Salvatore Balemo was booed, and then you gave him a funny look because I guess you guys would have been the faces against Demolition who were brought in as
right. So, the reason why I gave him a funny look is there was a gorgeous girl in the second row with a mini skirt on. It was nothing to do with the match. I went, ooh. Did you see her out there? Ooh. I kept going, ooh. Had absolutely nothing to do with the match.
I think I'm going to have to go back and look at that.
Yeah.
I guess they did the replacement because people recognized Randy as one of the Moondogs, even though I guess he had something to do with inventing the gimmick.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say. What really sucked is he invented it, you know what I mean? And then he got booted. I don't know why they would recognize him. Who cares? You know what I mean? Who cares? I mean, Barry went out there as Demolition. He went out there as the Repo Man. Who cares? Tony Atlas went out there as Tony Atlas and came back as Saba Simba. They knew it was Tony Atlas. I mean, Randy was a good guy. Randy and Larry, they were both great guys. They really were. They really were good guys.
Some fan really wanted to tell you this. He met you after an indie show in the 80s, and you talked to him as an annoying kid. So there you go.
Well, let me tell you something. There's a thing when they're walking out, which really always pissed me off. And I'll tell you another story. So when I was a wrestling fan, back in the 80s, especially 81 to 83, I'd go every month to New Haven Coliseum, every month. And New Haven, Connecticut. And when you would go to the Coliseum, you have to take the escalator up from the ground to get into the arena, the fans. And there's a platform after the first set of escalators, and there's a wall you can look over to the street. Across the street is when the wrestlers parked, right? So we would hang there and wait for the wrestlers to walk across the street. And we'd lean over and go, hey, Bob Backlund, to see if they would look up. Nobody would ever look up. No one ever would ever just go, hey, guys, how you doing? How are you, right? So now I turned pro. And I'm wrestling at the New Haven Coliseum for the first time. And I take my 77 Thunderbird, my big green 77 Thunderbird, and I park where the wrestlers are. And the guy comes up to me and goes, "Excuse me." I go, "Mario Mancini." He goes, "Oh, okay. Okay." So I get out of the car. My feet aren't hitting the ground. I get out of the car, grab my bag, put it over my shoulder. I start walking across the street. I almost get to the curb, and I hear, "Mario, Mario." And I look up, and there are kids hanging over the wall. And I dropped my bag, and I looked up, and I went, "What's going on, guys? Hey, I saw you on TV on Saturday, man. That was a rough match." I go, "Yeah, I got to try, though. I got to keep trying. Who you wrestling tonight?" I go, "I don't know. I got to find out when I get in there. Is Hulk Hogan going to be in there?" I go, "Probably." And I just stood there, and I talked to him for about 5 minutes. And I said, "Okay, guys, I'll see you guys in there. I'll see you guys." And they go, "Can we meet you out here after the show to get your autograph?" I go, "I'll be out here." I picked up my bag and I went in. So the guys would have a habit coming out with towels over their head to walk to the car. Nobody knew who it was. They'd have that white towel over their heads walking to their cars. They don't want to be bothered. So the comment you just saw is because there's not one place I went to where I didn't speak to each and every one of the fans, all of them. Even if I had to stay a half hour, 45 minutes after a show in the parking lot, I would talk to everyone, shake everybody's hands. Everybody. "Hi, how are you? How you doing?" I wouldn't skip anyone. I would never do that.
Very good. And I actually found that face.
Yeah, Hannibal, she was hot. The one thing that puzzles me, and I'm going, I was a baby face. Why didn't I shave? Why did I grow that thing? But yeah, that was that was the face. Yeah, that was the face.
Yeah, that definitely looks like I saw something on a woman's face.
Yeah.
And last question I'll ask you for today. I mean, great detailed answers again, but I wanted to get to this last time. There was a story about Dynamite Kid. You were delayed getting to a show or something, and Dynamite decided to rough you up.
This was all my fault, and I had it coming. And I took it like a man. I had it coming. Again, Tony Altomar was running a show for Rocco LaPenta, and he calls me at home, and he goes, "You didn't leave yet?" And again, I'm about 20 years old, and my father used to watch Matilda when Matilda was off the road. He was the only one that watched her, and that dog loved my father. So I said, "Tony, my parents aren't home yet, and the dog's here. I need you to leave right now. God, you're going to be late to the shot." I'm like, "Listen to me. My parents aren't home yet. They got to watch the dog. They got to watch Matilda. Bring her." I don't think that's a good idea. Bring her. We'll just keep her in the dressing room. Okay. So I bring the dog. So, the dog's in the dressing room. Everybody's petting the dog and everything. And he goes, "Why don't you take her out with you?" I go, "You think I should?" He goes, "No harm, no foul. Just we'll introduce her as the British Bulldog's bulldog." And for some reason, my age or whatever, it made sense to me. Giving her that kind of introduction, it made sense to me. And she got a big pop when she went out there. So I bring the dog to TV and everything. It's in its crate in the dressing room. And the Bulldogs walked in, and Davey said, hey, now somebody at that independent show He trained in Calgary. So he was actually having it filmed and called up the Bulldogs and told them. So Davey looks at me and says, hey, Mario, I have to talk to you. And I said, oh, all right, Davey. Before Davey can walk up and talk to me, Tommy cut in front of him. He says, hey, what you do? What you do? I go, what do you mean what I do? And he hit me with a stiff slap right across the face. And the minute he hit me with that, he hit me with a left right across the face. And he goes, you can't take the fucking dog like that. I went, oh, sorry. And I just walked away. I just walked away. And of course, all the boys were looking the other way. They were looking the other way. But listen, it was a stupid thing to do. You do a lot of stupid things when you're young. It was a dumb thing to do, and I had that coming. Schultz breaking my nose, I didn't have coming, but I love David. We're the closest of friends. I have genuine love for that guy. David Schultz is a tremendous human being. I thank him all the time for breaking my nose. All the time.
Yeah, that sounds like something that would never happen today for multiple reasons, but different time period back then. But you want to remind people where they can follow you on social media or look up your wrestling?
Sure. Paradise Alley, professionalwrestling.com, Paradise Alley, prowrestling.com. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can Google us. You're all more than welcome. I think I have some spots left. I think I have like 4,400 friends. You can hit me up on Facebook, a friend request. Listen, I don't accept any friend requests. If we don't have any friends in common, I usually delete them. But if you inbox me and say, hey man, I saw you on Hannibal, accept my friend request, I'll do it, just be aware that my hobby after I got divorced, I picked up a hobby of baking. So on my Facebook, you'll see a lot of pictures of cheesecakes and stuff because I make 46 different flavors of them. And I like a lot of inspirational quotes about relationships and stuff. So, and there's a lot of wrestling on there. So if, you want to hit me up on Mario Mancini on Facebook, again, I won't give you my real name because you won't be able to pronounce it. But if you just put in Mario Mancini, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, so.
And you have a guy here that wants to make you a cane. I don't know if he thinks that you took enough beatings that you should be walking.
Well, no. Thank God. Listen, thank God I don't need one of those yet. I mean, I just put in to renew my passport to go on vacation to I was looking at Brazil. I'm thinking about going on vacation to Brazil. So what you just do or somewhere, in the Amazon jungle there. Remember, maybe I'll meet an Edeline there or something. So I can get around is what I'm trying to say. I don't need listen, bro, I'm a firm believer, unless you got a brick oven or a pizza oven, there's no way you're going to equal a pizzeria at home with your oven. So I don't dabble in the pizza, but I do something called the Brick Street chocolate cake, which you can find on Pinterest. It's actually from the Brick Street restaurant. I do 46 different flavors of cheesecake. I make a mean carrot cake. But yeah, no, I don't really, and I make the classic Italian food, you know what I mean? But other than that, of course, I don't eat this stuff myself because, as Roma would say, he ate too many Goo clusters in Nashville, Tennessee, and I got this thing connected to my stomach now and tells me what my sugar is all the time. So I really don't partake in that stuff anymore. But maybe part 3, Hannibal part 3. If you want to do it, we'll get into the nitty gritty. We'll get into the Steve Lombardi thing and how it ended, and it is over. I was very angry about that for years until we finally met face to face. And Hannibal, one of these things like, yeah, that Hannibal, man, that son of a bitch with blah, 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 that Hannibal and that son of a bitch, stupid, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden we meet somewhere in the town face to face. And I'm like, hey, Hannibal, nice to, no, it wasn't like that. I stayed true to form, true to who I am. I hammered him hard. I hammered him hard. But
I hope you're not talking about the Pat Patterson type of hammering that's supposed to be.
Well, no, I'm not talking about that kind of hammering. But what I am talking about is two people at the same level. You can make an argument who's the better worker. You can't. I'm not in Barry Horowitz's class, bro. You can't mention my name in the same sentence as him. He was a master in the ring. He was an excellent wrestler. He was just so much better than me. I can't even. I don't even put myself in the same class as Barry Horowitz. He was excellent. But when you got two guys that are at the same level, and there's a question, not for me, who's the better worker or not, or who can do better on the mic skills, or who can carry a gimmick better, and one guy gets the break and the other guy didn't for obvious reasons, other than wrestling talent. I was hot for years, but that's over now, and I love Steve, and he's a good guy, and I hashed it out, to the point where afterwards, Scott Wilder Promotions took us out to eat, and Lombardi happened to be leaving that restaurant by the time we were getting in there, and he looked at me, he goes, "Hey Mario, is it okay that I ate here? Is it okay with you that I go?" Yeah, Steve, it's all right that you ate here. So
well, we'll get into the details of that. Yeah. And I do have to say, I did look up Chief Jay Strongbow's son after the last interview, and I was impressed with him too. And I agree.
Yeah,
with
Mark
you.
Young.
He should have had a push, but we could get into him more in a future one too. But
I got a lot of Strongbow stuff. Strongbow stuff.
Well, we don't want to take up too much of your time today, and also you've made me hungry talking about all that food. I think I'm going to cook dinner, but I'll let you close this off with whatever you want to say again. And yeah, we hope to do a part 3 sometime. The fans seem to want it too.
Yeah. Well, again, I'd like to thank you guys for chiming in, and also for Hannibal to have me on here. I'm kind of marking out to it because I can't believe it, because as I scroll through YouTube and stuff, I always see Hannibal and these huge names, popping up on his show, and I'm like, wow, this guy, like, he gets them all the big guys and everything. I'm like, geez, Hannibal TV and everything. And then Maurice, from Cheap Heat, going, "Hey, Hannibal," I'm like, what the hell does Hannibal want me on his show for? I'm like, I'm not one of, what does he want me for? What the hell does he want to interview me? But I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys chiming in. I hope everybody's has a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving. I feel kind of bad because things are so hard out there these days. I hope they have decent prices so everybody could at least have a turkey on their table, but I wish everybody is safe, happy, and healthy Thanksgiving. Maybe, I'll see you guys again on here before Christmas, and we'll go around 3, and I'll tell you some other stories, because we really haven't really scratched the surface. So thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not